Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our dear lecturer, Dr. Ahmad Shah bin Pakir Muhammad, and our fellow classmates. We are group number 4 from AM 2254A, and today we will be presenting the topic Feminism Theory. But first, let me introduce my group members. Muhammad Ridwan bin Taufik, Raja Nabilah binti Raja Muhammad Khairuddin, Ainul Hidayah binti Abdul Hadi, Sabariyah binti Seth, Norafina binti Azlan, and Nurul Izzati binti Muhammad Arapa.
I'm Raja Nabilah binti Raja Muhammad Khairuddin, the first presenter. So let's get started. There are two photos in this slide. On the left side is Christine de Pizan, and on the right side is Charles Fourier. But the question is, who are they? Christine de Pizan, or Pizan, born as Cristina de Pizano, was a Parisian author and poet born in 1364 in Venice, Italy. De Pizan was a medieval writer and historiographer who advocated for women's equality. In France, she was considered to be proto-feminist and gained fame across Europe in diverse writings, including poetry, novels, biography and autobiography, as well as literacy, political and religious commentary. De Pizan took up writing as she was left with no option to earn a living and support her children after her husband died of the plague. Although she is not the founding fathers of feminism, as the concept feminist did not exist at that time, she embodied the value and principle of feminism in her lifetime. Next is Charles Fourier, or in full, Francois Marie Charles Fourier, was born on 7 April 1772 in Besançon, France. Fourier was a French philosopher, a founding father of feminism, and a European socialist. The origin of the French word feminism was coined by Charles Fourier in 1837. His censure of the discrimination of modern society incorporated a critique of subjection of the woman, and in the ideal world in which he envisaged that women will have their freedom in future. Fourier stated that the level of development of any civilization could be determined by the extent to which its women were liberated. He regarded the position of women in European society as a form of slavery, and he argued that social progress could only take place in the context of equitable treatment of the female population. However, he did not advocate equality of sexes because there were a real difference between them. He rejected patriarchy, believed that the existing family structure was partially responsible for the oppression of women. Fourier came from a wealthy clothes merchant. He received his education at the Jesuit College de Besançon from 1781 until 1787, but was mostly a self-taught. At the age of 6, he began his apprenticeship in the clothes trade and was expected to be the heir of his family business. Later, he found himself unsuitable for the business and felt that as immoral. He moved from his native Besançon to Lyon, which is the second largest city in France, after his father died in 1791. And this is where he wrote his first fundamental work, known as Theory of the Four Movements. Fourier produced most of his writing between 1816 and 1821. In 1822, he tried to sell his book again, but with no success. Fourier died in Paris in 1837. That's all for me. I'll pass to the next presenter.
Thank you, Nabila. Now, let's move on to the next slide. What is feminism? Feminism is a range of social movements, political movements, and ideologies that aim to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of the sexes. Feminist perspectives on international relations seek to understand the existing gender relations, which is the dominance of masculinities over femininities, in order to transform how they work at all levels of global, social, economic, and political life. Within international relations, feminist theorists have drawn on the experiences of marginalized and oppressed peoples, including women, in order to challenge and revision the epistemological and ontological foundations of the field. Now, we shall talk about the 4 waves of feminism. Feminism is one of the oldest movements in global history. There is no single definition, but feminism boils down to ending gender discrimination and bringing about gender equality. Within this goal, there are many types of feminism. Instead of describing them in isolation from each other, feminism can be divided into waves. The first wave of feminism took place in the late 19th and early 20th century. The goal of this wave was to open up opportunities for women with a focus on suffrage, which is the right to vote in political elections. The wave formally began at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848 when 300 men and women rallied to the cause of equality for women. Slowly, suffragettes began to claim some successes. In 1893, New Zealand became the first sovereign state giving women the right to vote, followed by Australia in 1902, Finland in 1906, and the US in 1920. The second wave began in the 1960s and continued into the 90s. In this phase, sexuality and reproductive rights were dominant issues, and much of the movement's energy was focused on passing the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution, which sought legal equality for women and banned discrimination on the basis of sex. The third wave of feminism began in the mid-90s. The institutional victories of second wave feminism has led them to think about other aspects of their identity, welcoming individuality and rebellion. Many women freely expressed their sexuality in how they spoke, dressed, and acted. While many ideas and many movements swirled around in this time, the one rule was that there weren't rules. A woman should choose how she lived her life. Third wave feminism also became more conscious of race. Kimberly Crenshaw, a gender and critical race scholar, coined the phrase intersectionality in 1989. The term refers to how different kinds of oppression, like those based on gender and race, intersect with each other. While mainstream first and second wave feminism had largely ignored or neglected racial disparities within gender, the third wave paid more attention. Fourth wave feminism continues to reckon with intersectionality. It criticizes white feminism, which ignores the unique struggles of women of color, expose how non-white feminists and ideas have been and continue to be suppressed. Some people think we're still in the third wave of feminism since the fourth wave isn't so much of a shift as the continued growth of the movement. However, with the Me Too movement and resurgence of attacks on women's rights, many believe we're living in a new wave. Social media activism has propelled the movement firmly into the technological age. It builds on the third wave's emphasis on inclusivity and asks hard questions about what empowerment, equality, and freedom really mean.
Before we move to the main factors of feminism theory, let me introduce myself. My name is Sabaria binti Seth, and I will explain to you how this theory exists. The first factor is sexual crime committed by the United Nations. The UN Security Council enacted Resolution 1325 in 2000, mandating greater inclusion and attention to gender in the UN peacekeeping and reconstruction. However, at several locations, UN peacekeepers involved in local prostitution, rape, and even sex trafficking. The reported behavior of UN troops from several countries serving in Democratic Congo was described as shameful by Secretary General Annan in 2004. Investigators discovered hundreds of cases of sexual crime committed by the United Nations personnel. Secondly, gender perspective. Following Resolution 1325, the Gender Advisor position was established to accompany international peacekeeping and relief operations to provide practical advice on more effective operation in the context of gender relations in developing countries. For instance, the leader of a Swedish group of men sent to Sri Lanka to build a bridge stated they did not have to worry about gender issue because the task is to build a bridge. When asked how it would be used, he replied that mostly by car. Then, when asked if a woman would use it, he responded with women should walk. Thus, bridge has been redesigned to include a pedestrian walkway due to this gender perspective. The next main factors will be explained by Norafina.
Thank you, Sabaria. Good day, everyone. My name is Norafina binti Azlan, and I will present the next factor theory of feminism, which is power and operation. The combination of prejudice and institutional power result in operation to design a system that discriminates against certain groups while benefiting others. These distinctions are used to prove a gender-specific position of social rules and inequitable access to benefit position of power and privilege differentiates and reconstruct the power of domination between men and women. Make sure the equals empowerment, social pressure, distrust, and rivalry. Even though the forms and method of practice are different between culture and alter significantly, over time it persistent has resulted in the formulation of patriarchy. Patriarchy refers to institutional reformation predicated on the supposition that men and women are polarized and unequal. The dominant gender ideology against personality difference is central to patriarchy, where the assumption that psychological gender difference between sexes are associated with difference in the character, behavior, and ability. Next, objectification. Over the last 4 decades, the objectification term has been one of the crucial aspects of the feminism movement. Sexual abuse, harassment, violence, and pornography that despite women as object, product, or sexual property. Objectification often applies to how women are portrayed, and it does most will always associate with sexualization. Objectification is recognized to describe sexual objectification. The rise of objectification as a central concept in understanding gender relation added anti-pornography feminism activism and criticism. Criticize the gender style of seeing and the male gaze dominance. Feminists believe that pornography eroticizes the inequality between gender, where women must reduce the attribute of being eternally readily accessible in serving men. Simply put, pornography paints a false picture of one woman's desire, implying that women are and would like to be submissive men's sexuality and conditioned due to this, and they regard women's submissions as attractive and male's dominance imposed, sometimes coercively, this spitting image of sexuality on women. And that's all from me, and thank you.
Next, we move to the impact of feminism to international relations. Firstly, gender mainstreaming has become a well-known concept within the United Nations, with some of the most symbolic advances in women's rights. Feminism has demonstrated the construction at gender identities that perpetuate normative ideas of what men and women should do. Cynthia Clow in 1989 has asked one inspired question, which is, where are the women, in order to encourage international relations scholars to see the space that women inhabit in global politics and to demonstrate that women are important actors in the international system. In addition, the issue also highlights the importance of intersectionality, which understand that international relations is shaped not only by gender but also by others' identity, such as class, race, or ethnicity. Intersectionality refers to where these identities intersect and in turn how different groups of people are marginalized, suggesting that we must consider each in tandem rather than in isolation. Secondly, the impact of feminism to international relations is the United Nations has promoted women's rights in order to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. To give an instance, COVID-19 outbreak has shown that United Nations women have developed a rapid and targeted response to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on women and girls and to ensure that the long-term recovery benefits them. Focus on 5 priorities, which is gender-based violence, including domestic violence, is mitigated and reduced. Second, social protection and economic stimulus package serve women and girls. Third, people support and practice equal sharing of care work. Fourth, women and girls lead and participate in COVID-19 response planning and decision making. And the last one is data and coordination mechanism, include gender perspective. Furthermore, United Nations also imposed that every COVID-19 response plan, every recovery package and budgeting of resources need to address the gender impact of this pandemic. This is meant to include women and women organization in COVID-19 response planning and decision making. Next, the impact of feminism to international relations is the liberal feminist model like US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have been instrumental in situating women in policy in the US, and the outcome was Women, Peace and Security Act of 2017 has been signed into law. It promotes women meaningful inclusion and participation in peace and security process to prevent, mitigate or resolve violent conflict. The law ensures congressional oversight in the US government effort to integrate gender perspective across its diplomatic, development and defense-related work in conflict-affected environments. Then, the impact of feminism to international relations is the UK government has identified the prevention of sexual violence in conflict as a main foreign policy objective. It was a cross-departmental initiative led by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. The aim is to raise awareness of the extent of sexual violence against women, men, girls and boys in situations of armed conflict and rally global action to end it. Next, I will present on the lesson learned of feminism to international relations. The first is feminism is not just an ideology, but it is a gender equality. Feminism has added new dimension to understand the world politics system. Feminist international relations scholars seek to illuminate how the international relations are a gender construction in which both men and women are important actors in the world. In highlighting both inequality and relation of power, feminism reveals gender power and what it does in global politics. Being concerned with women's subordination to men, gender inequality and the construction of gender identities, feminism has challenged a homogeneous concept of women in international relations and exposed gender logic as powerful organizing framework that can raise the voice of women's rights in politics, economy and law.
Thank you, Ainul. I am Muhammad Ridwan, and I will be presenting the advantages and disadvantages of feminism. As we all already know, feminism is a complex set of ideologies and theories that at its core seeks to achieve equal social, political, and economic rights for women. Although feminism benefits everyone, its aim is to achieve equality for women, because prioritizing those who are most oppressed means freeing everyone else. Since men's rights are already secured and intentionally protected, feminism does not aim to help men, and these are the advantages. The first is women have achieved equality. Women also have the right to vote in election. Women have the ability to talk in public, and last but not least, women have the ability to demand their rights. Next is the disadvantages. There is a generational difference, which is some women believe that men and women should be treated equally in all aspects of life, and that physics is included in everything. The next disadvantages is harassment. We all know that when a male observes a woman in some nations such as Mexico, it can be risky since she may perceive it as harassment. Traveling by metro or train is also risky because if a guy robs a woman by accident, the woman can sue the man for sexual harassment.
In conclusion, feminist research has demonstrated the value in taking women's experiences and contributions seriously and used that as a base to demonstrate how international relations rest on and perpetuates gendered ideas about who does what, who experiences what, and why in global politics. Beyond this, there is also recognition that women are important agents in political, economic, and social processes. Despite its designation, feminism does more than focus on women or what are considered women's issues. In highlighting both inequality and relations of power, feminism reveals gendered power and what it does in global politics. Being concerned with women's subordination to men, gendered inequality, and the construction of gendered identities, feminism has challenged a homogeneous concept of women in international relations and exposed gendered logics as powerful organizing frameworks. That is all from us. Thank you for listening.